Hey everyone, and welcome back to the series where I take one of the cards from the Granny Square Stitches card deck and I create a square for you. So last week was week number 1 and we did the single crochet. I suspect, I haven't looked at all the cards, but I suspect that each week we are going to be sort of working up in sort of stitch level difficulty, if you will. So this is the single crochet, the most basic. And this week, card number 2, which I've already pulled out, is this one. And this is the half double crochet. So the single crochet is the shortest stitch next to a slip stitch. The half double crochet is one sort of step taller than a single crochet. So for this square, I am going to be using the pink pearl that I used last week, and then I'm introducing cactus for my green. We are using Anthem yarn from Cascade Yarns. This is a wonderful 100% acrylic worsted weight yarn that is not scratchy at all. It's super soft and squishy, machine washable, and good for wearables, blankets, just about anything you want to make out of it. Okay. Let's get started. Let's take a look at the chart that's on the back. So the symbol for the half double crochet is, it looks like a capital T. So last week we had single crochets and that looked like a plus sign. So now we've just kind of moved that horizontal bar to the top of our vertical line and we have a T. We've also got our chains, and then you can see how we've got sort of 2 chains on the sides of our rows. I'll talk about that when we get there. Last week we only had 1 chain. So the half double crochet stitch is a little bit taller, and some designers like to have a chain of 2 before you start your half double crochets. I will say that's not my favorite, but we're just gonna work with what is in this pattern. Now, I have sort of looked ahead and I can see that we are working into these chains and the chains are counting as a stitch. So I am going to recommend that you have 2 stitch markers. This will help you keep your sides straight, keep you from dropping stitches, and also help you identify those chains to know where to work into when you get there. All right, this is just my pointy hook. We're not using a teeny tiny hook like that. We're going to use our 5mm hook. So the notes on the pattern, you've got your stitch repeat. So if you want to increase the size of your chain, you want to make a blanket with half double crochets or scarf or whatever, this tells you the stitch repeat, which is just 1. And then this is the instructions for how to work this square. So we are going to start with a chain of 15. If you look along the bottom here and count the chains, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so that's where we get our chain of 15. And this also tells us that our very first half double crochet needs to go in the 3rd chain from the hook. And you leave these 2 chains, they are going to pretend to be a half double crochet, and we're going to stitch into them on the way back. So we're going to work row 1 in yarn A, and then we're going to work 3 rows in yarn B, and that is our repeat. So my yarn A is going to be my pink pearl. Find my end somewhere. And any project that we are starting with a chain, we need to start our chain with a slip knot. So I'll review what I showed you guys last week. This is how I make a slip knot. There are many ways to make a slip knot. This is how I make mine. I have my tail in my hand. I wrap my yarn around my fingers, and then holding on to this yarn, I bring it underneath that strand that I've wrapped over the back of my fingers, push it through, hold on to it so that it's a loop, and then let go of my fingers and pull that loop. And now I am ready to work. I'm going to put my hook in my slip knot, tighten it against the thickest part of the head of my hook, and then I'm ready to start making my chains. So we're going to yarn over and draw that yarn through that loop on our hook, and that's the first chain. We're going to keep doing that until we have 15. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to keep moving my fingers up my chain, which helps keep my chains a consistent size until I have 15, and I completely lost count. So let's take a moment and count our chains. If we look at the front side where we can see our V's, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I need 15, I need 3 more. Now, because we're going to be putting a border on this, I am going to work into my back bars like I did last week. So I'm going to flip my chain over so I can see those back bars. I know I need to leave 2 chains unworked, so I'm going to work into that 3rd chain. So this is my first, the first bump is my first chain, the second bump is my second chain. I'm not going to work into those. I'm going to make my half double crochet in that. Before I go any further, a reminder that in your little booklet are, both the symbols, but also the written out instructions on how to make each stitch. So in case you forget. All right, so 1, 2, 3, half double crochet. We're gonna yarn over, and yarning over means the yarn goes over my hook, and I'm gonna hold on to that yarn over because I don't want to lose it. Now I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to insert it into that 3rd chain. I'm going to yarn over again and pull a loop through that chain. So now I've got 3 loops on my hook. I'm just going to take a moment, straighten them out, and I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So that is my first half double crochet. Now I want to take a moment. I'm just going to take my hook out so you can see better. So what we have here, we've got our half double crochet. That's the V that corresponds with our half double crochet stitch. This back here are those 2 chains that we skipped, but I need to work into those when I come back down with my color B. So I want to sort of mark them, and I'm going to use a stitch marker. So I'm going to find the V of that stitch, the V of that chain, I should say, and I'm going to put a stitch marker around that. So I know I need to put my final half double crochet of the next row in this marked chain. Okay, let's continue. I'm going to go to my next bump. I'm going to yarn over, hang on to that yarn over with my finger, insert into the bump, yarn over again, pull through a loop, 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3. Yarn over, insert into the next bump, pull through a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3. And I'm just going to keep doing that in every bump all the way down my chain. Careful not to split my yarn like I almost just did. Oops. Working into the back bumps like this is slower, and it's definitely slower than when you finally have stitches. Working into your chain is always going to be the slowest part of the project. But when you are working into your back bumps, it's even slower. So just give yourself some grace and take your time, make your stitches as consistent as possible. Okay, I have 2 chains left. In that last chain, we need to change color. So I'm going to yarn over and insert into that last chain, and then I'm going to pull through a loop. I'm going to pause there. My second color is my green. Oh, sorry if I went off camera. Let's zoom out a little bit. So I've paused. I have 3 loops on my hook. I haven't done my final yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Grab my color B, I'm going to drape it over my hook and pull through those 3 loops with the green. Now we're going to chain with our green, but first I'm going to take the working yarn tail of my other color and just wrap it over my hook like I did last week. So let's look at the chart real quick. So we did our chain, and then we did our single crochet down the chain, and now we have changed color. We need to start with a chain of 2. See how there's 2 ovals here? So 2 chains. And do you see how those ovals are stacked right on top of my half double crochet? So that indicates that they are pretending to be a half double crochet. So I don't put any more stitches into this half double crochet down below. It's going to look like you want to put some stitches in there, but the pattern is calling for you to not do that. So let's make our chain of 2. 1, 2. I'm going to turn my work. This is the stitch I was talking about. It's going to look really tempting, but it's already been taken by this chain 2. So I'm going to make my first half double crochet in this next stitch. So yarn over, insert into the stitch. This time we're going under both loops of the stitch, pulling up a loop, yarning over, pull through 3. So now let's pause again so I can put my stitch marker in here. Just like I did when I was working into my chain, I need to mark my stitches. So this one here, this V here, belongs to the half double crochet that we just made. What I want to mark is my chain 2. So it's kind of tucked under and hidden away, which is another reason why we want to mark it, because it's easy to miss it on the way back. But I need to put a stitch in there on the way back, so I need to mark it so that I know that that's my final stitch. So now I have a stitch marker there, and I have a stitch marker there, and that will help me. With each row, you're going to move your stitch markers up as you go. All right, so we've got 1 half double crochet in that second stitch, and then we're going to put a half double crochet in each stitch all the way down my row. I've just got a couple stitches left. If we take a look at what we have right now, I've got this clearly defined stitch, and then I've got where my stitch marker is. So I know I have 2 stitches left. So let's make that first one. That one's easy. It's clearly defined. Now, where our stitch marker is, because it's a chain, it's a little bit trickier to find your V. Now I had it marked, and if you can get your stitch marker into a V, it will help you find the V when you want to make a stitch into it. So I'm going to yarn over and hang on to that yarn over. I tend to do this 1 loop at a time. So I'm going to pick up that first loop with my fingernail, and I'm going to dig back there and get that second loop. Sometimes it comes easily, sometimes you have to fight for it. If you're fighting a lot, just pick up 1 loop, it'll be fine. I'm going to yarn over and pull through. It's going to be tight. And then complete my half double crochet. Bringing my chart back in again. We have just completed this row. Okay, so we've gone this way, and this way. So this is that last stitch we just did into the chain 2 of the pink. So now I just need to repeat that. I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to put my first half double crochet in the second stitch because that chain 2 is pretending to be a half double crochet. So it's taking that first half double crochet. going to chain all the way down, and my last half double crochet goes into that chain 2, and I have marked it so I don't lose it. Okay, so let's take a look at that. We're not changing any color, so it's all going to be in green. We're going to chain 2. I'm going to mark that stitch right now. I'm going to turn my work. Remember, that stitch has already been spoken for, so I'm looking at this stitch over here. I'm going to yarn over and insert into that stitch. You may have noticed I just gave it kind of a little tug to tighten it up because we are in essence skipping that first stitch. It might feel like there's a gap. So when I sort of give it a tug and tighten it like I did just then, it will help shrink that gap a little bit. There's always going to be a gap. That's the nature of chains versus stitches, but it will help minimize it. And then I can just half double crochet in each stitch all the way along the row until I get to my stitch marker. I'm nearing my stitch marker. I've got one defined stitch here that I need to work into. So I'm going to do that. And then I've got my stitch marker. And because this is where the color change is, it looks a little bit messy. This is why putting your stitch marker in right away is a really good idea, because later on you might be tempted to think that this was the top of your chain 2, and then you'd be down a stitch and your work would start to do this sort of a thing. Okay, so I'm going to take out my stitch marker. Do my yarn over and hang on to it. And then I need to find that V again. So I'm just going to kind of turn my work so I can see it on my side here. Use my fingernail, pick up that first loop of the V, get my tail out of the way, pick up my second loop, pull through a yarn, and yarn over and pull through all 3. So that's what we have so far. And that is the extent of the pattern, except for the color changes. Now, see how my working yarn is over here from my pink? I have one more row of green to do, and then I need to change color to pink over here. I can't carry that across because then I'll just have this big old string at the back of my work. So we're going to have to cut this, which means we're going to have more tails to weave in when we're done. That's just the nature of crochet sometimes. Okay, we got one more row to do, all in green. So we're going to chain 2. I'm going to mark that last chain before I do anything else. Turn my work, making sure to skip that first stitch. I'm going to half double crochet all the way down. Tips to help you with your yarn overs. Okay, or your pull throughs, I should say. Sometimes I wiggle and I go through one loop at a time. So let's look at that. I'm going to yarn over, insert, pull up a loop. I'm going to yarn over and I'm just going to kind of wiggle my hook and go through one loop at a time until I get through all 3. Sometimes I can pull through all in one motion. So even there I did a little wiggle. To help you pull through in one smooth motion, or to help me pull through in one smooth motion, and you might want to give it a try for yourself, I put my thumb and my middle finger sort of on my work, just below where my loops are on my hook, and I gently pull them down and I pull my hook up at the same time. So I'm just expanding those loops a bit, so that when I do this final yarn through, I've pulled to give more space for my hook to come through nice and smooth. Okay, so give that a try. Just give a gentle pull down as you're pulling through with your hook. The worst thing you can do is be super tight. It's just going to be a nightmare to get through all of those loops. Okay, we're at the end. This is where it kind of looks like I only have one stitch, but I put my stitch marker at the top of my chain 2, and I've got this other stitch here, so I know I have 2 stitches still remaining. And I just got to dig out that back loop. And like I said before, if you're having trouble getting 2 loops on your hook from a chain, just go through 1. It'll be fine. Okay. Backing up because I need to change color there. I got all carried away. So I'm just going to pull out that yarn over, get those 3 loops back on my hook. And now I can bring in, let's just zoom out a tiny bit. I can bring in my color A, lay it on my crochet hook and pull it through. And we can take our green and just lay it over our hook to trap it. And then we chain 2 with our pink. And we put our stitch marker in that second chain before we forget. I'm going to turn my work, and now I can do 1 row in the pink. So I can cut this off because at the end of this row I need to reattach my green on the other side. So that stitch has been taken. We're going to go into the next one. I'm going to give everything a bit of a tug to tighten up this stitch and try and minimize that gap that's left between the chain 2 and the first half double crochet. And then I'm going to half double crochet down the row in my pink. I'm almost at my end. I've got 1 more pink stitch to do before I need to color change. So I'm going to insert into my chain. Do that yarn over, drop that yarn, grab my color B, which is green in my case, and pull it through. Trap my pink and chain 2. Put my stitch marker in the top of that chain 2. Turn my work, and then I can do 3 rows in green, skipping that first stitch. So that's what we have so far. If we look at our card for the pattern, you've got 3 pink rows. So right now I'm on this first row of green above the second row of pink. So I know I need to do 2 more rows of green, 1 of pink, and then I can do my border. All right, I will meet you back when it's time to do our border. I'm just about to start my final row of pink, and then if we're making it as per the sample, I would need to cut my pink again and attach my green. That's a whole lot of extra ends that, quite frankly, I don't feel like weaving in. So I'm going to teach you guys how to carry your yarn. So I've already made my color change. We did that trick where we trapped the green in the chain there, which I need to mark. Okay. I'm going to take my green yarn that's still attached to my ball. I'm going to hold it at the back of my work. And then when I go into my next stitch, I'm just going to make sure that green yarn is also on top of my hook when I do my pull up a loop, so I can complete my first half double crochet. And that green is now trapped behind this pink stitch. So I'm going to do that with each stitch. So I'm going to insert into the stitch, but I'm also going to make sure my green yarn is laying over the top of my hook as I make my stitch. So you don't want to incorporate it into your stitch. You don't want to pull it through your stitch at any point. You're just laying it there and crocheting over top of it. If it gets loose, don't worry about it at this point, like as in you start to see like it starts pulling out like that. Don't worry about it at this point. We'll address that when I get to the end. So I'm going to keep going, crocheting over that tail. This is optional, you guys, but I'm just lazy and I don't want to weave in any more ends than I absolutely have to. Okay, I'm at my second to last stitch. I'm gonna pull my stitch marker out. Get my hook in to that last chain. There we go. Okay, so now before I pull through with my green to change color, I'm going to give it a tug. And I'm going to lay it down to show you this. I'm going to sort of hold the far end of my row. I'm just going to tug that green a little bit. I don't want to distort my stitches, but I just want to make sure that any loose little loops of the green get pulled out. And you can sort of lay your finger over top of your stitches and give your green a tug and you'll be able to feel the yarn moving. So that looks pretty good. I don't see the yarn at all. It's just laying right here behind these little pink legs, if you will. So now I can switch color. But first, before we do that, let's take a look at the instructions for the border. So we need 2 rounds of single crochet, and in the corners we are doing a chain 1. Okay. What happened? I lost my stitch there. Okay, let's try that again. With all my tugging, I pulled out my stitch. Okay. I'm going to pull through with my green, and then I'm going to give it another tug to just make sure it's not tight back there. But it's still, it's not loose and pulling, like falling out, but it's not tight and pulling it in. Okay, I can cut this pink off. I don't need that anymore. And now I can just work my single crochets in my green. So single crochets just need a chain 1 to turn. And this time we are going to work in the very first stitch. So I'll put a stitch marker there, more out of habit than necessity, but, and then we're just going to work single crochets along the top. Let's review a single crochet. I get ahead of myself. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, so single crochets, we're not going to yarn over first. We're just going to insert into that stitch and then yarn over and pull through a loop. So now we just have 2 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. That's a single crochet. So we're going to do that in every stitch, and I just yarned over. I'm so used to making half double crochets. Oh my goodness. We're going to put a single crochet in every stitch across to the corner, and that's where my stitch marker is, because it's in that chain 2 still. Okay, we got 1 more here. take my stitch marker out, get my hook into that stitch, which is a bit tighter than normal, I think. There we go. So now in our corners, we're going to do a single crochet, and we're going to chain one, and we can turn our work to come down the side and going right back into that same space. So it's a tight space for us because we're working into a chain. We're going to yarn over and do another single crochet. And now I'm going to mark that chain one, because we're going to work into that chain one when we come around with row 2 of our border. So now we're looking at the sides, and this is where we have to just kind of make up places to put our stitches. We want to have it even. So here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So we want to have 14 stitches along there. So I've got one there. I'm going to try and get my hook into this mess of color change shenanigans happening down here. I'm going to try and get at least 2 strands of yarn over my hook when I make my single crochet. That looks like a good space to go. So that's 3. Let's count it out. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. Now I can't remember where I counted. Sometimes I'm trying to work over my tails. Sometimes I'm letting them hang loosely so that I can weave them in properly later. It's honestly, working down the sides, it's all about what feels right and good for you. Okay, let's see how many stitches I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11. Yeah? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, 11 it is. Okay. This is like the first row. So that's, I'm going to make this my corner. So I'm going to put a single crochet in there, chain 1, another single crochet right back in there. And then I can find, because I worked into my back bumps, I can find the V's of my stitches and put a single crochet in each V all the way across. Theoretically, if we've done things correctly, we should at least have the same number of stitches on the top as the bottom. The sides I am less worried about. Yeah, sure, you should have the same number on each side of your squares, especially if you want it to be as easy as possible to sew them all together later. But there are ways to fudge, so. The more important thing is to have the same number of stitches on each side. Okay, that's my last stitch. So I'm going to single crochet, chain 1. I realize I should have put more stitch markers in there. I don't think I have any here. If you're making this at home, put a stitch marker in your chain 1. And here I should put a stitch marker in that chain 1, but I don't have any more to hand, so we're just going to keep going. So now I want to have about the same, I want to have the same number of stitches up this side as I have down the other side. So I am going to have to be more careful. This is being annoying. Well, we're just shoving it in. Okay, so on this side I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. That's 1, 2. So it's 9. I need to fit 3 more along here. It's 1, 2, and then my last stitch needs to go where my first stitch was, and we do a chain of 1. I'm going to join with a slip stitch, so let me just back that up. So to join our round, I've chained 1. This is the first crochet of my round. It's in my first corner, so I'm going to stick my hook underneath the V's of that stitch. I'm going to draw through a loop, and then I'm going to draw that loop through the loop on my hook already. So that closes it. That's called a slip stitch. Now to start the next round, I'm going to keep going in the same direction. I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to go right back into that stitch again with another single crochet. And then this is not required, it's optional, but you can mark that stitch. Just more to show you the end of your round. And then this part's pretty easy. We're going to put 1 single crochet in every stitch. So now we've got nice defined stitches along the top and the edges. And in the corners, I will show you what we're going to do when I get there. All right, I'm almost at my corner. So I've got my single crochet. I'm going to take my stitch marker out. And that was marking my chain. So you can kind of, it's harder with single crochets, but you can kind of pull your stitches apart. In that chain 1 space, I'm going to put a single crochet, a chain 1, and then another single crochet in there. And then we get to single crochet down the side. Do the same in the corner and keep going. So I'm going to meet you up at the beginning, and we will look at our finished square together. Okay, I've almost finished. I have got a couple more stitches here. Now, this was the first stitch of the round. So I need to find my chain 1 space, which is kind of in between these stitches, not where my stitch marker is, in this space here next to it, which is gotten tight. So this is my final corner. So I'm going to single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. Now I can take this stitch marker out and either do a slip stitch to join, or my preferred method, which is you cut your yarn and then you're just going to slide your hook out with the yarn. Take this onto a yarn needle. So that's the first stitch of the round. I'm going to skip over that stitch. I'm going to go into the second stitch from front to back underneath both loops with my needle. I'm going to pull the yarn through, and then I'm going to take it and I'm going to go down the center of that last stitch I made and down the back. And we've created this faux stitch. So now I can turn my work over. Just going to give it a little bit of a tug, make sure those stitches are all about the same size, and then I can weave my tail in through the back. So I'm going to go down once, manipulate my stitches again. I'm going to come back up through slightly different channels so I don't undo what I just did. I should have cut a longer tail, FYI. Always cut longer tails than you think you need. And that is our finished square. It feels smaller to me than the other one, so let's compare. It is. So either I did something horribly wrong or my tension for my half double crochet is just tighter than my single crochet, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But there we go. That is week number 2, the half double crochet. Thanks so much for joining me. See you next week. Bye-bye.